All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. The conversation still continues. It's the state of the nation. We're talking about matters, politics, and everything in between there. Professor Tom Ojienda, Senior Counsel and Senate Aspirant for Kisumu, is also already here with us. And Joshua Kipto, Nandi County Assembly Speaker, is already here with us as well. And Franklin Mukwanja, Executive Director, CMD, is joining us online from Copenhagen in Denmark. And Joshua, before we went for the break, we were talking about the IEBC. Before we get into the ghost of 2017 as the MPs reject Chebukati laws, there's been a voter register anomaly. KPMG has pointed out close to 1 million registered voters as IEBC is trying to move to implement the audit report. Seems to have an issue. Do you have confidence that 60 days to the polls, IEBC will conduct a free and fair poll?
Thank you very much. I think I was here on studio when the Deputy President was giving in his papers on Sunday. And I remember that issue came to our consideration because each of the presidential candidates raised the same question. The Kenya Kwanza team as well as the Azimio team. And if you look at their demands they asked, touched at the heart of the concerns being raised now about the voter register. Elections, as has been proven over time, is a process. And our biggest Achilles heels as a country when it comes to election management is that we are a country that operates like the proverbial ostrich. As soon as we finish an electoral contest, the moment the 5-year cycle concludes with a general election, we somehow put everything in the back burner and forget and wait for the next cycle. So that the issues that are always raised every time we have a general election, and at the center of it is the issue of the voter register. Let me take you back to the Kriegler Commission, which was formed after the Bengal 2007 general election. One of the recommendations was a free, verifiable, and accessible voter register. The credibility of the voter register is at the heart of a credible election. And the proposal then, and that is formed the basis of the new IEBC we have now, it was that the timelines have to be adhered to. Yeah. I'll say it's a hit and a miss. A miss in terms of the timeline is quite small, but a hit in terms of it is better for us to discuss about this 60 days to the election. Today is the deadline per se, and I wouldn't want to be so hard on them, but I would only be giving a caution. I strongly wish that every time we finish an election, we work on these things ahead of schedule. Yeah. But as we speak right now, if I'm to use what IEBC shared yesterday, and I think 1 or 2 weeks ago, that was the main concern that the Deputy President raised. And the concern was, what confidence do we have on the register? So with the KPMG giving a verdict and breaking down the figures, by today, IEBC has to clean its act and confirm, is this the final register we have? Number two, it also befalls upon us as citizens to equally verify. That aspect of verifying that whether you are in the voter register makes a whole difference. I pray, and I want to be an optimist, that as at the close of business today, the 60-day mark starts running today, we would want those two aspects being covered. Number one, the voter register to have been clean, and the issues raised by the KPMG to be sorted by today. Number two, the dry run which Prof was talking about, testing of our election management kits. That is the most important, and that's why you're talking about the goals of 2017. Voter register was one, verifiable, but number two, it's about election transmission, because if you have a right voter register, what matters and what will dictate this election, 60% of our problems the last 2-3 elections has been on results transmission. So the dry run that IEBC has to run today makes a whole difference. My caution would be, we would want to do it differently. One of the mistakes that has been, or one of the red herrings, election is about perception. We cannot drive a perception that the election is rigged, the election has a problem. No. I would want us to be cautious. I would want us to be forthright and ask specific questions. The way you are asking, is the voter register in order? The concerns, and I'm happy the two coalitions came with that objectivity. I was really impressed if you look at the concerns raised by the Deputy President. They were very specific. When the Azimio candidate came, in fact, they came with a petition, same thing. And they were blow-by-blow specific questions. And the IEBC now, going out of the way addressing it, the only rider I'll add, communication is key.
Yeah.
I feel that IEBC has yet to up their game on communication. Like, as the close of business today, I would want them to do live presser and real-time updates and say, for example, after KPMG has done this, this and this has been done, and we can confirm with certainty, and our registers are open to the public for scrutiny, both in our website and the voters can verify with their phones. The moment their communication is ahead of schedule, so that our job would be to react, our job is to follow through, then the work will be easier for our elections in 2022.
All right. And Prof, you raised an interesting matter. Let's now talk about it. The ghost of 2017, as the members of parliament are rejecting Chebukati laws, and there are quite a number: 3G internet coverage, alternative results transmission guidelines for 11,000 polling stations without 3G coverage, including moving to nearby covered stations. That this has all been rejected. So it's 2017 all over again. In fact, that's what the newspaper is saying, that Parliament's rejection of the new regulations intended to seal the loopholes at IEBC that forced former CJ Maraga to annul the victory of President Kenyatta in 2017 has thrown the Electoral Commission into a spin barely 60 days before the general election. So, legally speaking, where does this leave the country? And IEBC as well?
Trevor, I have referred to the very basics or the very minimum that the IEBC must give Kenyans. And I've referred to Article 81E of the Constitution and the fact that every election must be preceded by the IEBC providing a system of election that is accurate, simple, verifiable, accountable, and transparent. And that speaks to Article 86A of the Constitution. Now, the regulations then talk about vote transmission of results. That where you need to have a network, the concern is that over 11,000 polling stations may not have 3G network. 3G network is the network that is sufficient for the
results transmission.
The voter, the KM kits to work and for transmission to be done in real time. So that you then will, by the time the returning officer or the presiding officer goes to the tallying center, you have the physical result. For the presidential elections, you have the Form 34A must be transmitted electronically, bearing the results within a framework that will ensure verifiability of that result, so that you don't have the possibility of interference or the possibility of the Tharaka Nithi that we had of in 2007 that never was, because there was no Tharaka Nithi. Because in Tharaka Nithi, for instance, they just have 234,000 voters in 2021, yet in 2007 you had 1 million votes. I mean, how did that work? We do not want a repetition of what never was in 2022. And that is why we need a verification exercise that will ensure that we have a system that is very... Now, let me tell you why Parliament has rejected the regulations or the proposals by the Chebukati team. It is just because of time and because of their concern that you cannot use electronic means to transmit results when you have not verified that you have sufficient network to be able to complement that process. So that the manual, you cannot outlaw manual and stick to electronic. You must have a system that allows both to work. I know that tables have turned. Perhaps those who are advocating for electronic are now on the other side. That I know. But clearly, I think the concern is the time. And that is why Parliament did not want to, in a hurry, enact legislation. Yesterday, I watched TV, and I saw that just a couple of Parliament, Speaker Muturi was having just a couple of MPs and was asking MPs to stay in for a debate. Of course, in Parliament, the quorum, once the quorum is set, then, once the quorum is met, even if you walk out, the quorum continues until the end of session. But this is not the time when you can pass meaningful legislation because Parliament is going to adjourn sine die until the next parliament is convened after the election.
Yeah.
I don't think that they have their heads into any law, and any law that is passed at this moment will not only be rash, it may not be law that would serve the interest of this country.
Yeah, but Prof, legally speaking, doesn't this then open a possible battleground? Because the same grounds that were put out in 2017 is the same situation right now. Can someone then come in and say...
Trevor, I think this time round I am so sure that we will be appearing for the respondents. Mr. Kipto will appear for the petitioners. We will defend if we have to defend. But I think the time frame at this moment, in my view, is perhaps not ripe for law to be enacted in this quick hurry.
Okay.
Because I mean, you hardly can get parliamentarians to form a quorum right now.
Yeah.
They are keen to go home, and that is why tomorrow, I think it's today, Parliament will adjourn. I'm sure even its county assembly has adjourned.
We are adjourning. Maybe a quick answer to that is that it is not that we have a deficit of laws. Our election laws, as they stand, if implemented to the letter, can still cover for the same issues, because these are more administrative issues. When they faced the Maraga court, and I wanted to assure my senior counsel that the parties will not change. Now that they were acting for the petitioners, they will remain the petitioners, who will be the respondents. One of the things that I can guarantee, Trevor, is that the issues raised by the Supreme Court were issues that IEBC could address administratively. I'm happy the IEBC wanted the same to be captured within the legislation, but nothing stops them, because election management still falls under their domain. There is no law that prevents them from executing this, because look at the issues you've raised. It's about 3G internet coverage. Yeah. They can make a decision, and the decision should only be corporate in nature and should be participatory. You saw each of the coalitions putting in the liaison team. The Deputy President had picked 3 led by Professor Kindiki. The Azimio team also had their team led also by Dr. Kindiki on their side. So each of the teams, by giving liaison to the IEBC, I feel that is an opportunity to be able to capture, so that the issues raised here on matters election transmission can best be handled at this point, and say, yes, Parliament may not have legislated. And I agree with Prof. It is too late in the game to expect Parliament to legislate. One of the things that you need to have as a reality, quite a number of the MPs possibly are not coming back because they have lost in the nominations. And that is the challenge we are facing in the counties. Especially for the MC, it's even worse. The turnover is significant. Yeah. 85 to 90% going home. Would you expect them to still be in that frame of mind to legislate objectively? Not necessarily. The laws change, that we no longer close our legislatures per se. There's no longer the idea that our National Assembly, the Senate, or the county assemblies have been disbanded. No. What changes is that we adjourn sine die, whereby we adjourn indefinitely, so that the term will lapse as soon as the new team comes in. Yeah. But this period of time is more or less transitional, so that the only work remaining is more administrative. And I think it makes sense for Parliament at this point to say, we do not have that frame of mind. Most of the MPs are out there in the field, even those that are still fighting to come back. They will not have time to come in. But my proposition is, the current laws as they are, our Elections Act, the IEBC Act, and even our Constitution, and several administrative measures that have been captured since 2017 are substantive enough to still give the Commission a foundation to deliver on these issues right. And that's why we are saying, with the 60-day period, let the Commission take advantage. And my only additional aspect, please involve the stakeholders. Now that each of the coalitions and parties have come in with their liaison, put them in, so that when myself and Prof will be now in the Supreme Court, because this matter will go to the Supreme Court, as has been the case since 2013 and 2017, and I want to still guarantee we'll be on the respondent end. We will be now talking about, did IEBC follow our advice? And I'm sure at that time, Prof will be appearing before the Supreme Court, acknowledging that at least for these ones, the IEBC did.
Okay, let me bring in Mkwanja on this. Mkwanja, are you concerned when the same issues under which the 2017 elections was annulled, are there still the same prevailing circumstances that have not been addressed? And now the MPs have not addressed them in any way. So IEBC is still left in a quagmire exactly where they were in 2017. There's the server issue, for example, details of access of elections, system logs and server, especially by political parties who have argued against the security of the database, still an issue. 3G internet coverage of 11,000 polling stations without 3G, no alternative. Are you concerned that the same grounds are still prevailing in 2022?
Yeah, I am really concerned, and I want to agree with my brother's Professor Agenda and the Nandi County Speaker, that first we have a time lapse. It's not fair to legislate 2 months to the general election. The implementation of this piece of legislation can only add to the challenges that we already have. The second thing is that we already have a guidance for this. If you look at the Kriegler, the Johan Kriegler report, it's clear that electoral laws should be passed at least 6 months, very late 6 months to the general election. A constitutional, an electoral commission should be in place, fully constituted, at least 2 years before the date of the next election. And these are still what the speaker is saying, that we are the proverbial ostrich. We have not acted on the Kriegler report adequately. We have also not acted on even the Supreme Court ruling handling the 2017 general elections. But let me turn to the question of technology, which is quite critical in this, because we have a high trust deficit and therefore turned to technological solutions to aim at improving the integrity of the electoral process and possibly to engender the trust of all stakeholders. And we are aware that technological processes are quite good, but as a country, we have yet to achieve the main objectives. And these are, of course, ensuring that all information produced during the election is trustworthy and generating broad acceptance that the electoral outcome is a true and fair representation of the citizens' will. Now, if election technology may improve efficiency of the electoral process, we also must appreciate that it's not a panacea to mistrust and fraud among political players. And this is where our challenge is, that we want technology to sort out our bad manners. We want technology to adequately cure the mistrust and fraud that is really rampant in our political processes. Accomplices, in the polling station, from security to election officials, to the voters, to the agents, are things that we have to look at it. Election must be looked at as a utility that is highly dependent on the political context in which it is applied. I want to contend and put on the table that I don't think the political environment, the political context in this country makes our election, the election technology, a utility that can help when it's applied. Yeah. Now, whether stakeholders can forge a consensus over the reliability of technology will be vital if Kenya is to emerge from its current electoral predicament. The challenges, if you look at the rudimentary answer by the former IEBC CEO to the IEBC about the connections. I mean, he's the Director General of the Communications Authority of Kenya. Then he says that go and ask IEBC, they are the ones to go around. If the shoe was to come back to the other foot and he's the CEO of IEBC, would he have the same answer? And I think these are things that we have to look at each other in the eye and say the capability for us to work together. The challenge that we faced in 2017 particularly of coordination of all election management bodies is still playing out. And we have to speak to this so that the election management bodies can be more cooperative, can work together more closely, and be able to deliver a credible election. IEBC is independent, should be independent, but cannot work alone. Yeah. It needs the support of other EMBs to deliver a credible, verifiable, and legitimate outcome of the process. All right, keep your views coming at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. But Prof, legally speaking, I'm still stuck on this conversation. Yeah. Precedence has been set. The same situation still prevail into 2022. Is that legal
enough ground for someone to go to court, regardless of the outcome. Say there were issues that were raised in 2017, they were not addressed significantly, therefore these poll results are contested, on the simple fact that there's a precedence that has been set.
There were clear recommendations made in some of the petitions, and clearly one of the petitions that comes to mind is the Maina Kiai petition and the questions raised in that petition. But Parliament must always act ex post facto, after the fact of the finding by the courts. In this case, Parliament has not acted. Ideally, IEBC should have come up with these proposals sufficiently early, or in the last 6 months, as he has said, because you cannot have the institution that is in charge of elections wait for too long until it is too late to come to Parliament with a bill. I know that, but this is again, I agree with Kipto, that you have sufficient framework that can lead to an administrative approach that can deal with some of the lacuna, including IEBC deliberately having, for instance, availing 3G, 4G, 5G network all over the country for purpose of the election. If that is a possibility, that will solve some of the problems of transmission entirely, actually. Number two, having a dual system and efficiency that will ensure that every result secured and transmitted will be transmitted both electronically, if at all you have that network, or the physical copy will be availed and sent to the tallying center securely in good time, so that you can verify those results. You see, the concern here is Article 86A and Article 81E. Verifiability, accountability, transparency, but also simplicity. Because these are the questions that every petition is pegged on. That as long as you have a transmission that raises doubts, so that creates a difference between the physical results entered into the result, 34A or 34B or 35A, that's presidential and governor elections, that then you can dispute, then you have a problem. And every petition is founded on all these anomalies from all the polling stations. That is why every result must be collected individually to establish that there's a conflict or there's non-transmission of the actual results secured. And that is how you nullify an election. I had the advantage in 2017 of doing a number of petitions from northeastern Kenya, Mandera County specifically. And there are concerns about transmission and about the accuracy of results because of a lack of 3G network in some of the polling stations. And that then creates a possibility of rigging of the election. Because then, not even rigging, but also vote stuffing. Stuffing where you can, because there's no verifiability, the electoral officials then can do what is out of the book. And I think, Trevor, even identifying individuals who are voting is a process. You need that network to identify, so that if you put your fingerprints, your details then come on. If you don't have that network, then you'll have manual voting. Now, manual voting has a problem because you use the black book to identify individuals, and manual voting then has a whole big problem, creating the possibility of rigging elections. And I think, but on nullification, every nullification of an election will be based on verifiable questions. You cannot just say that generally because the law wasn't there that you nullify. No. You must establish your case beyond the balance of doubt for an election petition to succeed.
Okay. Let's talk about the race to State House now. And there's also another issue. Kipto, you're also a legal mind here. The people who have been sort of blocked by IEBC from running for president are now claiming that they're going to go to court. Do they have legal standing? Without really delving into the merits of their cases, whether they've not filed them or not, they've just mentioned on TV that they are going to court. Do they have legal standing? And can they in any way alter the election dates, or are they just simply going to alter the IEBC timetables? Because so far they've only cleared 4 presidential candidates. more than out of 55 of them?
Good. As I answer that, maybe I just needed to add one thing Prof was talking about on matters. There's something we are missing here. Beyond the 3G internet coverage, 3G internet coverage mostly captures the issue of results transmission, not on the voting bit. And the issue has always been about transmission. On the voting, the BVR kits can work with or without the 3G internet, that can work. The issue is result transmission. However, just to show or to buttress the desire to always have an open mind. We should not be so rigid and fixed and say, minus a legislation, minus this law being passed, then we are certain that the elections won't be conducted as expected. That is not true. Because if you look at even the issues raised in that 2017, was the issue about security feature. Because, yes, you can choose to do obvious manual because these forms are physically signed. Even if you're transmitting the results via the web, don't forget that at the end of the day, verifiable results from each of the polling station will be dependent on the form signed. Each constituency returning officer must also be submitting, I think it's either Form 34A or something, which must have a security feature. One red herring I wanted to point out, in 2017, one of the strong foundations for the nullification was 56 of those Form 34As from the 290 constituencies did not have a security feature. Yeah. And that one is nothing to do with the 3G. So you can still capture or you can still cover the anomaly of the 3G by ensuring the documentation used for the declared results at the polling station are duly signed and have security feature. That one you can easily. And that's why I am coming from a realistic point of view of saying IEBC still has the ability and the capacity. Let me come to the second question. Do the presidential candidates have a legal standing? They have a democratic right. They have a legal standing to go to court. Let me give the basis for that. It is not just the presidential ticket that has attracted complaints. Even aspirants vying for the other downstream ticket from MCA to governor. How many of those aspirants that have aggrieved, that have proceeded to go to court and have gotten orders and have gone back to IEBC and have been cleared? Look at the governor candidates. Quite a number were turned away. One of the main concern, and I think this one, something that was the law did not capture. Most of the governor aspirants had not made their mind as to who their running mates would be. So that as at the time they have won a nomination, and that consideration or requirement for them to pick a running mate, they inadvertently, without or unintentionally pick a running mate, and possibly this running mate was not aware 90 days ago that he or she will be picked to be a running mate, and possibly did not resign and was working in a public service or as a state officer. The law caught up with them. You saw the case of Chris Wamalwa in Trans Nzoia. You saw the case of Kangata in Muranga. You saw the issue of the certificates and academic papers. Some were being returned. So the presidential hopefuls or aspirants who had shown intention to vie can follow the same channel. My only concern with them, I was not convinced as a voter on a balance of probability that they have a solid case against IEBC. Yeah. Because what I'm happy with what IEBC did, the verification exercise was done in the full glare of the media. Yeah. The requirements were read out, very simplistic. Give us 48,000 signatures from at least 24 counties. And these are signatures that are verifiable. ID number, and it is easy. If you say that Kipto has signed for me and has a phone number and an ID number, they can easily verify with me because they'll just pick randomly and verify, does this ID number exist? So you saw some of the hopefuls. I saw the case of Dr. Ekuru Aukot, whereby when he was confronted with that issue about signatures, he ended up turning around and saying it is unnecessary. In fact, he started questioning the reason or the basis for those signatures. Yeah. He didn't answer the question, is that, can you comply? If the other hopefuls are complying. And it is not about the strength of a candidate, because you've said there are 4 candidates who've been cleared. The 2 contenders, primary contenders, if you're to be realistic and practical, it's only Kenya Kwanza and Azimio. But who are the 2 others that were clear? Professor Wajakoya, he was cleared. Look, he came first, turned back, came again, was cleared. No much drama, no much issue. So was it necessary for say that there is a scheme to block others? I don't think so. So I think what I would think is that it's more or less like grandstanding, and maybe gaining attention, because if you are to go to court, you don't shout and threaten. Mike Sonko did not threaten. he's actually going to court. He's going to High Court, going to Court of Appeal. In fact, yesterday IEBC was accepting part of his documents and is still going to Supreme Court. That is real action.
Yeah.
But the idea of just coming to the press and say that I'm being victimized, no, go to court. And the timelines are very strict. So they may have a legal standing. Nothing stops them, but I don't think IEBC on this matter on presidential hopefuls has been biased. I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm happy even this time we are actually seeing it, how they do it, outrightly and openly. The verification is not done in a back room. It's on the table. The candidates arrive, they are processed by the clerks of IEBC, and the chairman receives and declares that you've complied and you are now declared a candidate. And that was the case. And you could see even for the leading candidates, they are not giving a free ride. It took almost 30-40 minutes for the deputy president to be cleared. It took the same time for Raila, and the same people are given time to address and say what concerns they have.
Okay, Prof, is this a legal case that you would take, or do you see that this it doesn't go anywhere, and would it affect the schedules in any way, the election schedule?
Trevor, let me say that for my party, for the ODM, I've done two significant cases in the last week. I've had to deal with compliance or non-compliance by the governor of Mandera. I think the incoming governor, Hassan Noor, we did the case and won on the running mate question, because we had a running mate who was dropped and who insisted that he had to be the running mate. So he went to court. He took Hassan Noor to court. And we had to battle it all the way. And Hassan Noor, in the end, we were victorious. And he picked the running mate who will make him win the election. I think he's the next governor for Mandera County, I have no doubt. Another case was for Mandera East, the same situation where he presented his papers, and another individual who had been given earlier clearance by ODM went to court and challenged this presentation. We've had to battle all the way to the Court of Appeal. Yesterday again we won. Let me tell you, all these disputes are there, as Kipto has said, that disputes will always be there. But what I find completely immoral, abnormal, and in my view, out of place, is a candidate knowing very well what qualifications and requirements are required to run for president, presenting himself to run for president, then challenging the same rules that he has agreed to abide to. That is immoral. But for me, the most disappointing is a candidate who does not have a degree purporting to run for presidency while knowing the implications of Section 22(2) of the Elections Act, that you must have a degree. A degree is so basic. Everyone has it. Who doesn't have a degree? So for a whole person who wants to run for president, coming to present his papers, then later saying, oh, the degree is yet to be awarded in December, surely. And then you say that you're going to put up a battle in court. That is surprising, because you should have had a degree before declaring that you want to run for a president, because you know the requirements of Article 99 of the Constitution. It's basic. Now, to go to the other question, for instance, Sonko is citing 99(3) of the Constitution and saying he still has litigation. That's excusable. We'll deal with those questions. That you can take to court and you can argue that I'm still challenging this impeachment and therefore I'm still part of a court process. But where you know that you have no degree, all these 55 individuals who went to run, Nyambane, for instance, was told to come back with a degree so that Chebukati would verify at 2 p.m. He did not turn up. Why? If he knew he did not have the qualification, why subject yourself to the process? And that's why I admire Professor Wajakoya. He did all that he did with all his running mate wearing weed on herself. I think that's okay. But clearly, I watched them last night. I think they have a vision for this country. Obviously, I don't think that vision may be sufficient to capture over 20,000 votes, but I think it's a vision nevertheless. It's a vision. They have a framework that they can sell. Wajakoya speaks well, and I think he belongs to the future because the present is taken anyway.
Okay, let me bring in Mkwanja. Frankly, Mkwanja, what do you think of this issue by the presidential candidates who are now saying that they will go to court? In fact, some of them are saying that this clearance is skewed, that it was almost to favor the 4 who've been cleared right now?
Trevor, there is, every Kenya has a political right in Article 38 to offer themselves for an elective position or to cast a vote for their favorite candidate. And the candidates have that right, that they need to exhaust the legal mechanisms available to them to ensure that they get that right exercised. However, I want also to agree with the panelists that there is an obligation by the candidates to comply because an election is a process. The basic questions that we are seeing, if you cannot be able to submit the number of signatures that can be verified with national identity, copies of national identity cards for the supporters that, are supporting you. And then you go ahead to make it an argument with the returning officer, the national returning officer, or the presidential returning officer. You're not even saying or requesting time to comply, but you're challenging that process. And the question of whether you're qualified or not in terms of degree qualification, these are things that are well known and they were briefed before. So for me, let them have their day in court. Let the court make the choice. But we have seen, as well as voters, what kind of candidates they are. If you're not ready and prepared to comply, how sure are we that when we give you power, you will then become, you'll adhere to the rule of law? So they have their right, but let them exercise that right. Let them pursue that right, counterbalancing it with the obligations to comply with the process. And I think that is where the whole idea should be placed. That please exercise your right, enjoy your rights to the extent that you are complying with the process. Because we want an election that is a clear process that leads to a legitimate outcome. And as well, it is important that the chair of IEBC addresses some of these questions. Some of them that are hot air should be outrightly dismissed. But those that have any veracity, and I don't think the commission has much helped itself. Look at the blunder with the Walter Mongare, which was cited by Wanjigi. And then Walter Mongare is summoned later to be, for the certificate to be cancelled. These are issues that the IEBC should be alert on because they do not inspire any level of confidence in the decisions and the processes that they're going through.
All right. Let me read some of your feedback and then get into the final topic, the end of the 12th Parliament and what the 13th Parliament should not do or what they can learn from the 12th Parliament, and also the ratings of their performance as they adjourn. They're calling it Sine Die, Sine Die. One of them. They're adjourning until the next one comes into place. Let's see your feedback, though, right now at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. #Daybreak. Gideon says IEBC has been controversial over the last 3 general elections in Kenya. 2022 Chebukati and the team should try to instill a high level of confidence from the electorate, right? Bogira Jasper says our politicians know absolutely what they're doing, and what is that? IEBC is meant to fail. A functional IEBC is not in their best interest. How else do you explain the last-minute talk of reform when we had a whole 5 years? Okay. Amaganga Mustaf says aspirants are not talking about the missing 1.4 million voters in the IEBC register because it is a blessing in disguise. Okay. Peter says we should appreciate that IEBC is trying. With the revelation today, it calls for a national database such as Huduma number to be implemented for the future. Okay? Okelo Mwalimu says politicians will accept or vilify opinion polls based on their outcomes. If they favor them, they'll see them as sweet berries, while if they don't, they'll be seen as bitter melons. However, the politicians who competed against himself until 2021 should be more worried. Okay. Frank Orinde says, from our past experience, work on voter register should commence after elections, all through towards the next election. Last-minute rush only raises lots of speculations and as such create unnecessary tension and aspersions against IEBC. Okay. Remy Butia says IEBC is duty-bound to maintain political neutrality, ensuring that there are no impediments in updating the voter register. Honest and democratic polls depend on accurate voter roll. Okay? All right, on this, let's get a final topic now. We have about 15 minutes, and I'd like to hear from you as well on this.